Hello everyone and welcome back to Milo Farms. Well, it's right after Labor Day weekend and have a little bit of a bee update video. So we finished harvesting the honey. We got about 15 gallons of honey all together with the 5 different hives. We ended up taking the original hives that we had, all 5 of them lined up, and we had numbered them number 1 on the right to number 5 on the left. Number 1 through 3 were the hives that we had gotten the packages this spring and installed in the bee package installation video. And then from a local beekeeper, we'd bought 2 more hives. Hive number 4, which is this one, and hive number 5, which is this one over here. So we found a couple things wrong with that setup of the 5 hives in a row. It looked really nice, but the issue that we found is when you'd start working on one hive, the vibrations would disrupt all of the hives. So you'd have other bees getting upset, and then by the time you had gotten down to hive number 5 on the end, for example, there were so many bees around that it was just difficult to do anything that you needed to do. Not that we were getting stung or anything like that, but it was just too complicated to deal with all those bees flying around and try to get anything done. Particularly when we were doing the honey harvesting and we had tons and tons of bees out and around and trying to shake them off frames and things like that. The other thing that I thought of, just for myself at least, is I got to thinking of how would bees be found in the environment naturally. And I guess a little backstory is the gentleman that helps me with the bees here in town and answers my questions and has been very helpful all the way along the way. He says you ask 5 beekeepers a question and you'll get 6 different answers and every one of them's wrong. So I thought about that, and beekeeping to me has been very difficult to try to understand, because people, to me at least, because if I ask how to do something, somebody says, okay, this is how you do it, then I'm good with that. Well, beekeeping, you ask somebody how to do it, they'll tell you their way, then you ask the next guy how to do it, he'll tell you his way, and then you ask the next guy how to do it, he'll tell you his way, and each one of those people will say that the last guy was wrong in the way that he did it. So what I decided with the bees was that I would move them separately from each other around the property here. So I have one hive here, one hive about 10 feet away on the other side of the fence, and then over behind the shop is another hive, and then next to that white shed over there is another hive, and then about 200 yards on the other side of the street is another hive at another residence that's across the street over there. So in my mind, the bees, if you were to find them in a apiary where a beekeeper has a bunch of hives put together in one area, they're put together that way for the convenience of the beekeeper, not the convenience of the bees. So I thought, why not set them up more like they are in their natural environment, which is there's a hive over there, and then there's a hive, a few hundred yards away might be another hive. I don't know what the actual density of hives normally is, but to me, at least separating them out like I did, they are in a more natural state than they would be having them all right next to each other. Then the other benefit that I found is, now that they're separate, when you start working on one, you don't upset all the rest of them. Particularly when it comes to harvesting honey, you're only going to have that one swarm of bees around you while you're working, not the other 4 while you're working. So to move them, what I've always heard and read is, if you're going to move hives, you either need to move them less than 3 feet. So for example, this hive right here, you can't move it any more than 3 feet one way or the other so the bees can find it again, or you need to move it more than 3 miles. And that way the bees kind of have their road map set up in their head, and when they come out of their hive in the morning, they know pretty much where they are and what's going on. If you move the hive, say 200 or 300 yards away, and didn't do anything for them to be able to know our hive isn't where we left it last, they would not be able to find their way back to their hive, and they'd end up dying or getting lost or ending up somewhere else. So what my beekeeping mentor guy said was to move the hive at night when the bees are inside, block off all the entrances, move it, and then to put something over the entrance that's going to make them have to relearn their way to get out of their hive. And I don't know what exactly, where he'd learned that from or whatnot, but what I kind of thought of it as was in their natural environment, if a tree had fallen or something had changed, there was some big environmental change in their environment, then they would need to relearn that, to get out of their hive. So what I did is I took a queen excluder and stood it up on end, slid the tip of it right up underneath the outer cover, and stood it up right there against the entrance. So when they came out of their entrance, at the time I also had the robbing screens on there. When they came out of their entrance, they had to either go through the queen excluder or they had to crawl all the way to the outer edge and then get out and around it. So it was totally different when they came out of their door in the mornings. And it made it real easy for me to put it on there, leave it for a couple weeks, and then take it off. And then they've been just fine. I haven't seen any noticeable difference. The difference that I have seen that's been positive is there's no more robbing issues. There's not issues with other bees as much, at least, trying to get in and out. There's still some robbing or attempted robbing this time of year, and I can see that just sitting here watching this. But it's not like it was, where there's hundreds and hundreds of bees at the door trying to get in on each hive, particularly the hive number 1 and number 2 that were on the far right. So getting into fall and the things that we've done for preparing the bees for fall. So we've took off the supers. As you can see, there's 2 large boxes on there now. I went around to each one of them and I removed the robbing screens that were at the bottom there, those white screens. I'm not sure if we ever had an actual picture of those or a video of those, but remove those, put on the entrance reducers, and the entrance reducers right now on this particular hive are set at the larger setting of the 2. Basically you have 3 settings. You have the full entrance all the way across, then you have the kind of medium-sized entrance right now that they're using, and I'll see if I can zoom in there so you can see it, but I'm not going to get any closer without protection on. So you can kind of see that entrance there. And then over to the right, you see that smaller cutout, and if I were to flip that entrance reducer the other way, then they would have to go through that smaller entrance. So that reducing that entrance down to that size has made it easier for them to protect that entrance from robbing. Then they also have their other 2 holes right there and right there as well to be able to go in and out. So we reduced the entrance down on this particular one to that medium-sized entrance there. Took away the brood box, took away the supers, left them with just their 2 boxes for the winter. They've sat that way now for a couple weeks. And then we came along and we started our oxalic acid vapor treatment for the Varroa mites. We've done the first treatment. We're going to do the second treatment tomorrow, and then the third treatment in a few more days. There's definitely some different opinions on that, on how to do it. Some people say do it 3 times, once every 7 days. I was even told today by another gentleman that you should do it 4 times and do it every 5 days. But we're going to finish the last, I guess we have 2 more treatments. We're going to do those, and then we will give it a few days, and then we're going to do a mite count and see where we're at. If we still have quite a few mites, then we're going to go in and do the next round of treatments again. But what we want to have is we want to have the bees right now that are going to be raising the wintertime bees that need to last through the winter. Those bees need to be happy and healthy and as strong as they can possibly be. The other thing that we did is we went along and we lifted the backs of the hives up by hand and to see what the weight is. So basically, if you lift it up at the back, you're lifting half of the weight of the hive. And one of the gentlemen that I talked to said it should be around 50 pounds or so. Then the other thing that we did is we opened them up and looked at the honey frames in there to see how much honey they actually had stored in that upper brood box, or in that upper box. This particular one here, the entire upper box was almost full. The last hive that we were looking at, I guess the second to last hive, it would have been hive number 4, had almost no honey in the top of it. That box is extremely light all the way around. I mean, I don't know what the weight is exactly, but you lift this one that we're looking at now, you lift that one, totally different weight-wise. The one over there is very light. So we went ahead and we put in some sugar syrup, 2 parts sugar to 1 part water, and my bee mentor guy had recommended to put in some of the Honeybee Healthy with it as well, which is a feeding supplement stuff. A liquid that you mix in there has some, I think it's some kind of spearmint oil or extract or something in it, and then some other things that he sells there. Supposed to make the bees eat it even more. So we put some of that in with it in that last hive, and then the other hive that we have across the street. Then we also went and reduced the entrance down to the smallest entrance that you can see over here to the right. If we'd flip that around, that's what we did on the ones that they were getting food in, so we didn't cause them any issues with other bees trying to rob that food out of there. So what we ended up finding is that all the hives had very good weight to them, had a lot of room for brood in the bottom boxes, for brood for the wintertime bees. Didn't have much room in the upper boxes because it was full of honey. But we did find that hive number 1, which is the one that's across the street, and hive number 4, which is the one we were looking at very first, were very low on the amount of honey that they had stored in there, and when you tried to pick the boxes up, they were extremely light. So we went ahead and we put sugar syrup, a 2-to-1 ratio in there, with some of that Honeybee Healthy supplement, and just did that a few minutes ago, and see how that does over the next few days. We'll check back on them. So that's basically what we've done to get the bees ready for winter so far. This right here is hive number 1 in the list of them. This one also has the sugar syrup in it, and you can see here that it's also has the reducer reduced down to the small size. You can see here that there's quite a few bees also trying to get into this hive because there is syrup inside. These are bees from other hives and places, so the bees are having to do some defending of their hive there. So all in all, we're still not quite ready for winter. Like I said, we have to do the treatments, check for the Varroa mites, and then we'll continue to monitor the weight of the hives, and we'll probably end up giving all of them some sugar syrup before the summer's completely over. But things are starting to wind down. It's definitely been a very positive experience so far. Learned a lot. So if anybody has any recommendations or any ideas or thoughts on anything that we've done, this is our very first time doing this, so we definitely are not experts by any stretch. Basically, my video is just talking about what we did and what we learned and what mistakes we did, just like we had that mistake with the hive stand and found a better way to do it. So I hope everybody enjoyed the video. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit the button in the bell in the lower right corner to be notified of the next video. And we'll see you next time here at Milo Farms.